the sound of your truck pulling into the driveway, the familiar crunch of gravel under the tires. For a lot of men, that's the end of the workday. But it's also the beginning of something else. It's the moment of truth. You turn the key in the lock, push the door open, and what happens next tells you everything you need to know about the life you've built. For some, there's just silence, an empty house that echoes with the choices they've made. But for others, there's a different sound. It's the thunder of little feet on the floorboards, a high-pitched shriek of "Daddy!" and the warm, steady presence of a woman who looks at you like you're the only man in the world. Nothing, and I mean nothing, beats that feeling of coming home and seeing your wife and kids genuinely excited to see you. That feeling is priceless. In this video, I'm not going to give you a list of cheap tricks or dating advice. I'm going to give you the blueprint for building a home life that feels like a fortress, a sanctuary, a place you're not just returning to, but a place that is actively waiting for you. I'm Michael. I've spent 55 years of my life with tools in my hands, building things from the ground up. I've built houses, I've built a business, and I've built a family. I've known the profound quiet of a home after loss, and I've known the beautiful chaos of a home filled with love. The lessons I've learned weren't from books. They were carved into my hands and my heart. Now I'm handing you the tools. So before we start laying the foundation, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, because you don't want to miss a single step in this construction. Let's get one thing straight right away. That feeling, that priceless moment at the door, it doesn't happen by accident. It's not something you find, or stumble into if you're lucky. It is something you build piece by piece, day by day. A lot of young men today are focused on building their careers, their bodies, their bank accounts. And those things have their place. They're part of the structure. But they are not the foundation. They are the outer walls, the roof, the fancy trim. The foundation of a life that brings you that deep, soul-satisfying joy is the family you build within those walls. You can have a palace of a house, but if it's empty or worse, filled with resentment and indifference, you're the poorest man in the world. The man who comes home to a small rented apartment, but is greeted with genuine love and excitement, is a king. So what's the first part of the blueprint? It's understanding that your role as a man, as a husband and a father, isn't a secondary job you clock into after your real work is done. It is your primary work. It is the most important project you will ever undertake. The world will try to sell you a different story. It will tell you that your value is in your title, your income, your status. It will distract you with endless noise, endless pursuits that lead you further and further away from your own front door. But the truth, the one that settles deep in your bones as you get older, is that your legacy isn't written on a business card. It's written in the eyes of your children. It's felt in the steady hand of your wife. What's the toughest lesson you've had to learn about what truly matters in life? Let me know in the comments below, because I read every single one. Think of yourself as the master carpenter of your home. A carpenter doesn't just show up at the end of the day to admire the house. He's there from the beginning. He chooses the materials. He measures twice and cuts once. He pays attention to the details that no one else will see, because he knows that the integrity of the entire structure depends on them. Your family is that structure. Your wife is not your employee, and your children are not a hobby. They are the living, breathing heart of your life's work. And your daily presence, your attention, your emotional engagement, that is the wood, the nails, the mortar. It's the raw material of a happy home. I remember when I was first starting my business. The days were long, grueling. I'd come home covered in sawdust, every muscle aching. It was tempting to just collapse on the couch, to retreat into my own exhaustion. And some days I did. I'd be physically present, but my mind would still be at the job site, wrestling with a difficult project or worrying about payroll. On those nights, the house was quiet. My wife, Sarah, would be busy with the kids, and there was a distance between us. Not an angry distance, but a subtle, creeping one. It was like a fine crack appearing in a foundation. You can ignore it for a while, but if you don't address it, it will compromise everything. One evening, I came home, and my son, who was maybe 5 or 6 at the time, had drawn a picture for me. It was a crayon drawing of me holding a hammer and him holding a smaller hammer. He'd been waiting all day to give it to me. But I was so wrapped up in a problem with a supplier that I barely glanced at it. I said something like, "That's nice, son," and put it on the counter, then immediately started talking to Sarah about my work problems. I didn't see the look on his face then, but Sarah did. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, she came to me. She didn't yell. She never did. She just quietly handed me the drawing again and said, "Michael, he's not trying to interrupt your work. He's trying to be a part of it. He's trying to be a part of your world." That hit me harder than any 2x4 ever could. She was right. I was treating my family like a distraction from my purpose, when in reality, they were the entire point of it. I was building houses for other families, but I was neglecting my own. That night, I made a decision. When I came home, I was home. I would leave the sawdust and the stress in the truck. The moment I walked through that door, my most important job began. It wasn't always easy. It required a conscious shift in my mindset, a deliberate choice to be present. But that choice, made over and over again, was the most important one I ever made. It was the act of mixing the mortar that would hold my family together for the next 30 years. So how do you start being that master carpenter in your own home? It begins with a simple, powerful tool, the ritual of return. Your transition from work to home shouldn't be an accident. It should be a deliberate process. For me, it became the last 5 minutes of my drive home. I'd turn off the radio and just sit in silence. I'd consciously unpack the day, acknowledge the frustrations, and then I would put them away. I'd visualize a sturdy wooden box in my mind, and I'd place every work-related thought into that box, close the lid, and leave it in the passenger seat of my truck. It sounds simple, maybe even a little foolish, but this mental ritual was my way of cleaning my tools before I started my most important work. It meant that when I walked through that door, I wasn't a boss or a carpenter or a guy worried about a deadline. I was a husband and a father. Nothing more, nothing less. Once you're inside, the real work begins. And it's not about grand gestures. It's about the small, consistent acts of engagement. It's about putting your phone away, not just in your pocket, but in another room. The message you are sending when you are scrolling on your phone while your child is trying to tell you about their day is clear. This screen is more important than you are. That is a devastating message for a child to receive. It's a subtle form of neglect, a crack in the wall that widens with every single scroll. Your attention is the most valuable currency you have. Spend it on your family like you're the richest man in the world. And for your wife, it's about seeing her. I mean really seeing her, not just as the mother of your children or the manager of your household, but as the woman you chose. Ask her about her day and listen to the answer. Not with half an ear while you're watching the television, but with your full, undivided attention. What was the best part of her day? What was the hardest? So many men make the mistake of thinking their role is to solve every problem she has. When she tells you about a struggle, your instinct is to jump in with solutions, to fix it. But most of the time, she's not looking for a handyman. She's looking for a partner. She's looking for someone to say, "That sounds incredibly difficult. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I'm here with you." Validation is a tool that is more powerful than any hammer. It makes her feel seen, heard, and supported. It reinforces the foundation of your partnership. This is something so many men misunderstand. We are wired to be fixers. We hear a problem, and our first instinct is to find a solution, to provide an answer. We think we are helping, but what we are often doing is invalidating. We are subtly communicating that her feelings are a problem to be solved, rather than an experience to be shared. Learning to simply sit in that moment with her, to be a steady presence without needing to fix anything, is a skill. It's like learning to hold a delicate piece of wood without crushing it. It requires patience and strength of a different kind. It's the quiet strength that says, "I am here with you in this, and we will face it together." That builds a level of trust and intimacy that no amount of problem-solving ever can. It's the glue in the joints of a marriage, invisible but incredibly strong. Think about it like building a custom piece of furniture. You don't just slap it together. You study the grain of the wood. You understand its strengths and its weaknesses. You treat it with respect. Your wife is the same. She has her own thoughts, her own dreams, her own struggles. Your job is to be the craftsman who knows her so well that you can build a life together that fits her perfectly, that supports her, that brings out her natural beauty. This isn't about losing your own identity. It's about creating something together that is stronger and more beautiful than either of you could build alone. A true partnership is like a perfectly executed dovetail joint. Two separate pieces of wood interlock so tightly that they become one stronger at the joint than they are on their own. Another crucial part of the blueprint is creating family traditions. If your daily presence is the mortar, then traditions are the sturdy support beams of your home. They are the repeating patterns that give the structure its strength and character. They don't have to be expensive or elaborate. In fact, the simpler, the better. It could be something as small as making pancakes together every Saturday morning. It could be a weekly family game night with no phones allowed. For my family, it was Sunday dinner. No matter how busy the week was, no matter what projects I had going on, Sunday evening was sacred. We all sat down at the big oak table I built, and we shared a meal. Sometimes we talked about big things, sometimes we just laughed about something silly one of the kids did. It wasn't about the food, it was about the ritual. It was the act of consistently coming together, reinforcing the fact that we were a unit, a team. These traditions become the stories your children will tell their own children. They are the load-bearing walls of their childhood memories. What is one family tradition from your own childhood that you still cherish? I'd be interested to hear about it in the comments. These rituals, these traditions, they become the rhythm of the family. They are the steady drumbeat that everyone can march to. In a world that is constantly changing, chaotic, and unpredictable, these small, consistent acts of togetherness create a sense of stability and safety that is priceless for a child. It teaches them that no matter what happens outside the walls of your home, inside there is a predictable pattern of love and connection. It's the framework upon which they build their own sense of security. It doesn't have to be complicated. It could be reading a chapter of a book together every night before bed. It could be a specific handshake you only share with your son. These small things become monumental in the architecture of their memory. They are the decorative trim, the custom details that make your family's house a unique and beautiful home. not just another cookie-cutter model. Now let's talk about something that many men get wrong: discipline. In our modern world, the word discipline has become almost a dirty word. It's often confused with punishment or anger, but that's a fundamental misunderstanding of the term. True discipline, especially with your children, is not about punishment. It is about teaching. It is one of the most profound acts of love you can perform as a father. When you build a house, you have to respect the rules of physics, of engineering. You can't just ignore them because they're inconvenient. If you do, the house will collapse. Discipline is teaching your children the fundamental rules of life. It's giving them the blueprint for how to build their own character. When you set a boundary and you enforce it consistently, you are not being a tyrant. You are building a wall that protects them. You are teaching them that actions have consequences, a lesson that is far less painful to learn on a small scale at home than it is to learn on a grand scale out in the world. When you let your child get away with everything, when you fail to set clear expectations, you are not being kind. You are being negligent. You are sending them out into the world without a proper set of tools, without a blueprint. You are setting them up for failure. A father's love is not just about hugs and praise. It's also about being strong enough to say no. It's about being the steady, immovable wall that they can push against, to test their own strength, knowing that you will not crumble. This is how they learn to be strong themselves. I remember my daughter, when she was a teenager, wanted to go to a party that I just had a bad feeling about. I couldn't explain it. It was just a gut instinct, the kind you get after years of experience. I told her she couldn't go. She was furious, of course. There was yelling. There were tears. The classic, "You're ruining my life." It was one of the hardest nights of my life as a father. It would have been so much easier to just give in, to avoid the conflict. But I held firm. I was the wall. Later that night, we found out that the party had been broken up by the police, that there were drugs and alcohol involved, things that could have derailed her future in an instant. The next morning she came to me, quiet, and just said, "Thank you." She didn't need to say anything more. In that moment, she understood that my no wasn't about controlling her. It was about protecting her. That is discipline. It is love in its most practical, protective form. And this form of love is essential for building character. A child who is never told no, who never faces consequences for their actions, grows up to be a weak adult. They are like a house built without a proper frame, unable to withstand the storms of life. They expect the world to bend to their will, and when it doesn't, they crumble. When you are firm, fair, and consistent, you are installing the internal framework that will allow them to stand strong on their own 2 feet long after you are gone. It is a difficult, often thankless job. It requires you to absorb their anger and frustration in the short term for their benefit in the long term. But that is the sacrifice a good father makes. He is willing to be the bad guy for a moment if it means his child will be a good person for a lifetime. It is the ultimate act of building for the future. Building this kind of home, this kind of life, it's not a short-term project. It's the work of a lifetime. There will be days when you feel like you're failing. There will be moments of conflict, of misunderstanding, of exhaustion. There will be times when the silence in the house feels heavy, when the distance feels vast. These are the moments that test the quality of your craftsmanship. These are the moments when you don't walk away from the project. You double down. You pick up your tools, you reread the blueprint, and you get back to work. You communicate, you apologize, you forgive, you show up, especially when it's hard. A master carpenter isn't defined by his ability to avoid mistakes, but by his ability to fix them, to make the structure even stronger because of them. And as the years go by, you will start to see the results of your labor. You'll see it in the way your children navigate the world with confidence and integrity because you gave them the blueprint. You'll see it in the easy laughter you share with your wife, a language built on decades of shared experience and mutual respect. You'll feel it in the deep, unshakable peace that settles in your heart, the quiet pride of a craftsman who looks upon his life's work and knows that he built it well. The world is full of men who have built financial empires but have lost their families in the process. They come home to sprawling empty houses that are nothing more than monuments to their own ambition. They are surrounded by expensive things, but they are utterly alone. That is not success. Success is the sound of that key in the lock and the feeling of anticipation, of knowing that on the other side of that door is a world that you have painstakingly, lovingly built. A world that is excited to welcome you back into it. It's the feeling of your son's arms wrapped around your legs, so tight you can barely move. It's the look in your daughter's eyes that says you are her hero. It's the soft touch of your wife's hand on your arm. A silent acknowledgement of everything you've built together. This is the payment for your life's most important work. It is a wealth that cannot be measured in dollars, a treasure that cannot be bought. It is, quite simply, priceless. So, I ask you to look at your own life. Are you the master carpenter of your home, or have you been subcontracting the work out? Have you been giving your family the leftover scraps of your time and energy, or have you been giving them the best of who you are? It's never too late to pick up your tools. It's never too late to start building. It doesn't matter if the foundation is cracked or the walls are weak. You have the capacity to repair it, to rebuild it, to make it stronger than it ever was before. Start tonight. When you go home, walk through that door and be present. See your family. Listen to them. Love them, not with your words, but with your attention, with your actions. That is how you build a life of true meaning. That is how you earn that priceless feeling of coming home. Thank you for your time today. If this resonated with you, if you're ready to start building, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you can continue this journey with me. We have a lot more to build together.